way you can view. Let us know if you have any questions or concerns about that. In the meantime, feel free to share your screen. We love to see your faces. Make sure you raise your hand if we have if we're asking you to answer any questions. It just kind of helps us know who to go to in order, and we will try not to butcher any names in the process. If you start to have some lag in bandwidth, feel free to turn off your screen, but we are hoping we can keep everybody as engaged as possible today. So without further ado, Bob, I'm going to spotlight you and let you talk a little bit to this group about our historical Barry Waymiller University.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you. Touched. Let me say to you that it all began. Let me make sure I got my volume set right. Probably 18, 19 years ago, a young man, Brian Wellinghoff, still a young man, was at dinner with me in California. We were out interviewing an author of a book on leadership. And Brian, being brand new, asked me a question that anybody that knew me would not ask me. Brian asked me, "What is your greatest fear, Bob?" Well, I'm an eternal optimist. And I sat back for a minute and I thought, and I said, my greatest fear is that we were blessed with a vision for the way business could be a force for good, and that it would die with me. Which I've seen happen in many cases. Companies don't or unable to sustain their culture beyond kind of the founder. So we got up the next morning and I said to Brian, okay, you've surfaced the fear I have. What are we going to do about it? And I said, what do great religions do to survive over centuries? They've articulated their beliefs, which we have done in our guiding principle of leadership. And then they have disciples who tell stories that bring that belief to life for centuries to come. So I said, we need to create disciples, people who believe this is the way we should treat each other. They don't need Bob Chapman here to tell them. And so we decided the only way we could create disciples, because we can't send them back to our universities to learn to care. We have to teach them how to care, because universities teach academic skills. So I said, we need to start a university, our own university, to transform managers who manipulate people into leaders who care for people. And so that kind of crude beginning at breakfast, we came back to St. Louis, inspired now to make sure that this gift we were given would carry on well beyond my time. And this really eclectic group of team members, Brian and Rhonda and Sarah and a few others, Denabella, kind of start talking about what should we teach. And one of our team members named David Vandermolen said, well, if we're going to teach people to be leaders, we need to teach them to listen. And I thought, that's ridiculous. We're all adults. We know how to listen. Why would we? I mean, I was totally against it. The good news was the team was strong enough that they went ahead and did it anyway. And they developed, as you know, a 3-day class to learn to listen. And so I didn't think much of it. I was traveling to Minneapolis, and a young lady, probably in her early 30s, came up to me and said, Mr. Chapman, I just took your university listening class. I said, well, great. What was it like? I had no idea. And she said, it changed my life. I said, we taught a class at work that changed your life? And she said, yes, I now know how to raise my 2-year-old daughter. She didn't say I know how to run a better accounting department or marketing department or something. She said, I now know how to raise my 2-year-old daughter. I was struck dramatically by that comment. And like to session today, I started traveling around the country on my visits. And I'd get a group of people who took our classes. This was just a reaction to the listening class, because we also had a class on recognition and celebration and culture of service. And I started asking people, tell me about the class. I would say to you, having done this for about 17 years now, maybe somebody in 17 years said, I came back and ran a better production area, I ran a better accounting department. But 90+% of the feedback I get from these classes is how it improves their relationships at home, their marriage, their relationship with their kids, their relationship with their parents, relationship with their friends. And I was profoundly struck. And so what happened is this David's insistence we do this 17 years later. I think you know this, but Cynthia was so struck by the feedback that we started a nonprofit outside of Barry-Windler called the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities. And we teach around the country. We've taught 13,000 people in cities all over the United States how to care for each other by learning how to listen with empathy. And so my big learnings, my big takeaway is listening to people like you from around the world. Because again, I've been to England and Italy and France, and where we've taken it all over the world. And it is a consistent feedback I get. And the most common statement is it changed my life. And they don't mean at work, even though I'm sure it changes their at work. And I'll add to this that so clearly we have taught thousands of people around the world now how to listen. But I would actually substitute that by saying we've taught thousands of people around the world how to care for those people that they experience in life. Because one of the things I've learned is that when we're born, we're all born with unique characteristics, color of our eyes, our hair, our height, their weight. We're uniquely created by our parents. And but what I've learned in this class through the DISC profile and the kind of the examination of your personality is that we're also born with a personality type, DISC, DISC type. And what that personality type does is it creates a lens right here, an invisible lens through which we experience life. And that lens shapes what we see and how we react to it. And as unique as we all are in our physical characteristics, we're also unique in our personality characteristics. That is why two people who see the exact same situation can see it entirely differently, because the lens they were born with, that was shaped by their life, sees things differently than other people. And so what we've realized here is that we thought when we cared for somebody, we went over and talked to them. What we've learned is that when we care for somebody, we go listen to them with the skills of listening, not to debate, not to give them advice, but simply to validate their worth, which is what we have seen. I've seen it now thousands of times with every age, every intellect, every background, the universal truth. The greatest of all human skills is the capacity to listen, to validate the worth of the person you're talking to be totally present, not listen to debate, not listen to say you saw that wrong, but listen to understand and validate. And so I'll add to that a gentleman named Bill Urey from Harvard, who is a world peace negotiator, who's been negotiating world peace for 30 years. He came to visit our company and he sat down and he talked for 2 days to our team members. At the end of a 2-day visit, he looked at me and he said, "Bob, I saw the answer to world peace talking to your people." I said, "Bill, how could you see the answer to world peace visiting our operations?" He said, "I saw a place where people genuinely care for each other." Okay. I'll repeat that: genuinely care for each other. And Bill said, and and understanding your university and the fact that you teach listening and several other courses, he said, all of a sudden I realized I've been involved in global peace talks for 30 years. I now realize in my experience in world conflict, the problem is we have global peace talks, but nobody knows how to listen. So we have a world dominated by our political leaders around the world. I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm going to debate you and prove you're wrong. The way you see things is not the way it is. And when you learn to listen instead of judge, we could have a world where people begin to understand that people see the world differently, combined with their experience journey. And so, what we have learned is listening is the greatest of all human skills to care for other people that you experience daily, that you live with, that you're married to, and you work with. And so, the listening course is the foundation. I think you remember that the second course is around recognition and celebration. One of the things Cynthia and I learned in raising 6 kids is that if you don't compliment them 5 times more than you suggest things they could do better, it's difficult for them. So we teach people the skills of thoughtful, timely, appropriate recognition, not just that a boy and you've been here 25 years and you get an award, but the daily cadence of the business. How do we make sure that we spend more time looking for the goodness in others than we do the faults in others? Because in the time we have people in our care for 40 hours a week, if we give them these skills to listen, to understand, and validate the worth of others, if we give them the skills to recognize and celebrate the goodness in others, and the final class is culture of service, seizing the opportunity to serve others. So that's kind of how the university began. It was a very kind of eclectic beginning. We had no idea, but if you take what has happened since we began the university 17 years ago, 18 years ago, today we are known as having the most unique culture in the world. As we sit here today, as you know, Barry Wimler case study written by Harvard has become a best-selling case study for Harvard, and 70 universities from Japan to India use the case to teach leadership in this country. Our book, Everybody Matters: The Extraordinary Power of Caring for People Like Family. A typical business book sells 5 to 10,000. It has sold 90,000 copies in 7 languages around the world. We have people like McKinsey, the premier global consulting firm, in a dialogue with us right now about how they can learn from what we're doing and take it to their global clients. So I'd say to you all who have taken this class, why would we do this? I never went to the board and said, I want to spend $10 million a year taking people out of their roles, putting them in a 3-day class, having them travel around to do that. Nobody has ever debated. It was a decision that if we are going to genuinely care for the 12,000 people whose lives are in our care for 40 hours a week, we need to improve our skills of caring for them. For not to improve their productivity, not to improve their engagement, because we have a responsibility to give those people in our span of care a sense of safety, a security, so they can go home feeling good about being part of a team and treat their spouses, their children, behave in our communities. So you've all touched on it, but our goal of our university is really to create tomorrow's leaders who have these fundamental human skills that could heal so much of the brokenness that we feel in this world today. So my hope is that each one of you, we should almost have a baptismal event after you take the class where we get some holy listening water and you come down and you put your knees down and we get to put our hand in this holy water and say, you have now been blessed with the most powerful skill that you will ever experience to validate the worth of the people whose lives you touch. Use it fully every day. It is the greatest gift you could give anybody. So that's a little bit of the reason behind it. And so, as you know, people are studying this model because they can't quite understand how to care for people. They think it's giving better benefits, better pay, better vacation time. What we're trying to just say is, as we come together for 40 hours a week, How do we take each of these precious lives on the screen and make sure you have a chance to be who you're intended to be, contributing to the team your gifts and talents, so that together we can create a better future for each other and go home each night having enjoyed being with our team members, enriched by the experience, and better spouses, better parents, better citizens. So there's a lot at stake here. So that's kind of the reason, that's the why, that's why it was born. Because you all now are disciples of this belief. And we hope that you carry this heavy in your heart to share this with people in your life. And we start healing this brokenness we feel in the world. Okay, Ashley.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that introduction to kind of the history of where we started. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael now to talk for a few minutes about where we're at and where we're headed.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Bob, and all of you for joining this call. And that was really a perfect kind of tee up for what I have here for you. Really, this slide is meant to show just, what we're doing, this kind of community, this organization that we're building that you are all a part of, that really is just caring for each other and caring for the people around us. So just to show, that you are part of this kind of really great group that had just this year, we've held 22 sessions. We have 12 more planned. Some of those topics that, Bob mentioned already. And again, just from this year, we've had 308 participants. In 282 of those were unique. So that means 30 or so folks have been through more than one of these experiences, and just really showing just, how important this is to our organization, to our culture. So I just want you all to realize, you're really part of an awesome group, a really part of an awesome community here. And there's more to come. So if you've seen, we do have some webinars scheduled. I'll actually go ahead and throw a link to those if anyone's interested, coming up around our leader commitments that are around some of these very same things that we're talking about. So if you're interested in any of that or anything else coming up, definitely feel free to reach out to me and we'll help you out in that space. So if we want to move on to the next slide, just another thing I want to do very quickly is just touch on, some of the topics and things we discussed when you went through that Listen Like a Leader experience. We're going to ask you here in a moment about, some of those questions around your experience there. And I just kind of want to prime you a little bit on some of those things we talked about, help get you back in that kind of headspace. So one of the first things we talked about, as Bob mentioned, was we're all different. We're all different human beings. We have different behavioral tendencies and different communication preferences. And we use that DISC assessment to help us identify those things. We know that, different people have different ways of communicating. And by understanding ourselves, understanding those around us, we can flex and we can be more amenable and we can work together much better. We also talked about this communication cycle. We have a nice, pretty, visual representation of the different pieces, the art, the science of communication. And we kind of broke it all down and talked about, when you're communicating with somebody, it's not just the words you say. It's also the tone you bring. It's also your nonverbals, your posture, how open you are, things along those lines. And sometimes there are things that get in the way of effective communication, and just being aware of those can really help us connect with each other. So those are our filters, the things like our own experiences, our own biases, things along those lines that we bring. We sometimes have barriers, occasionally, you're in an environment that's too loud or it's really hot and it's just kind of hard to pay attention. Or sometimes we have blockers where it just really gets in the way of communication. We also really focus on those listening skills. So those are the 5 listening skills you see there in the middle. We talked about attending behaviors, physically and mentally being present for the person you're listening to. Acknowledgements, which is showing them that you're present, nodding your head, saying things along those lines. Opening them up for more information. So using door openers to show them you really care and you want to hear more, and allowing them to have that space and grace to offer more information. Maybe one of the hardest ones that seems very simple is silence. And this is, not just not speaking, but also, silencing your mind, silencing yourself internally so you can be present for that person that you're listening to. And finally, showing them that you've listened through reflective response. by, responding back to them, showing that you understand, that you can see things from their perspective. You've heard, you've listened to what they have to say. All of that really, and I know you all would agree here, is really not that important unless you wrap it up in empathy, unless you really care about that person, about what they're saying when you're listening to them. Then we got into some of the more difficult aspects of communication. When you have a change coming, or if you have feedback or some confrontation, how to go about doing that in a way that is really easy for both parties. And that's where we crafted those FBI messages, where you identify the feelings, you identify a specific behavior and what that impact was. And what that really does is really shows the person that you care about what is going on, and that it opens up the conversation to have that dialogue. We know often when people go through those situations, it can, what we call from the session, put them in the box. And to understand that it can be a different experience for everyone, and there's no really shortcut for getting somebody out of the box other than just sitting there with them, listening to what they have to say, and helping them, connecting with them to get through that. The last thing we closed out on that session was using that FBI message for recognition. Something we're all, very committed to here at Barry Waymiller is, shining the light on folks that deserve it. And we also can use that FBI message in that space as well. So that's what we talked about in that session. Like I said, just wanted to prime everything up so that we can have a really good connection here with each other and with Bob for the remainder of the session.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, especially for those of us that took the course a little bit a while ago. I thought it would be great just to have a few topics in mind as we reflect on our questions. So we're going to go ahead and get into it now. I have asked everybody to think about a couple of questions, and we'll start with the first question, which is, what was the most valuable part of this learning experience as you went through the Listen Like a Leader course? What was the most valuable part of that learning experience for you? And feel free to raise your hand, and I will we'll get started. Donald Jones, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, the most valuable part for me was really reanalyzing the reflective listening step. I definitely went into the class with, I think, where a lot of people were at, where you just repeat back to the person that you're talking to what they said, and you think you're listening, but really reflective listening is a little bit more of a reaffirming that you're receiving the message correctly. So that was really important to me.
Thanks for sharing. Appreciate that. Eva Maria.
Okay. The most valuable for me really was to learn about myself, to really take the test and to get the result and to see black on white certain things, and also to see how with these few questions that we had been answering, how well the profile really described myself. Also, I use the profile to give it to my family as well as to give it to my team, and to really get feedback on what they think is showing me and what they think might not be showing me. And the second most important thing was to me to see is, this is my inner profile, my set, and this is how I'm flexing for my today's job. And I can see that many of the things of the flexing I do in my job today is associated to the things that annoy me on my daily work, because they really do not fit with my inner feelings of, this is the strength I have from my inside, but it's not satisfied with the way that everything else is set up. So it was the learning about myself and how it's perceived by others and how others do those things. So that's what I had.
I think that's really good self-reflection.
I think that's an interesting comment, because to me, this profile is fascinating, because it's like an X-ray of our personality. And most people see it and said, is that really me? So to see ourselves clearly is where it begins, right? So we can understand ourselves and begin to therefore understand others. Great comment.
Thanks. Heidi, I see you have your hand raised.
Hello. There are two things that I really enjoyed about this Listen Like a Leader class. The first thing was that it's very real and non-judgmental, where it's just an open, honest conversation that we're having about things that we could improve and things of which we need to be aware, and just to grow that awareness and knowledge of what we can do. And then the second part that I really enjoy is the fact that it provides a real guidance to how we can implement some of these solutions, how we can find those solutions to saying not just these are some of the things that we should be working on, but this is how you're going to do it. And that's, I think, a big difference to some of the other classes I've taken outside of Barry Waymiller, because there's all these things that we could change and improve, all these skills that we could learn, but focusing specifically on how we implement that and how we actually make those changes happen, that's what I like most about this class.
Hey, Heidi, would you do me a favor? When each person shares their thoughts, which we really appreciate, would you just kind of say, what you do, what division you're with, how long you've been with us, just kind of as an introduction so we get to know you other than just your brilliant comments?
Thank you. I'm Heidi Wenninger. I am the Global Marketing Director at BWU Flexible Systems. And as of yesterday, as of today, I've been here for a full year and 1 day. So relatively recent, and I can't believe how fast this first year went by. And I am so happy to be here. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Congrats.
So
A
what
full
Heidi
year.
just said, I hope all of you can say in your life that this is added to the quality of your life. That's meaning and purpose. And you get to work with, remember, the number one source of happiness in the world, according to Gallup, is a good job doing meaningful work with people you enjoy. And I hope that's what Heidi was just saying in her first year.
Thanks, Heidi. Jonathan.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Larson. I'm the People Team Generalist for the Barry Waymiller Corporate and our span of cares in the corporate setting. The thing I learned, I've been here since August, by the way, so still relatively new, but the thing I keep kind of coming back to from Listen Like a Leader, which I learned so much and I wrote down so much during the course, but what I keep finding that's applicable to my everyday is that listening requires you to shut off your own brain, right? Like when I was listening before, I would always listen with the intent to have a certain response afterwards, or I would, notion of what their ask is of me and try to anticipate it and keep go, go, go. But real listening requires you to, listen with empathy and with an open mind. And I've found that by doing that, I've been able to really find what the actual issues are when people are asking me of something and really understanding where they're coming from. And it changes my whole perspective on how then I address what they've said. So just by slowing down, I've been able to become more efficient in not even my role, but just being an efficient listener and a friend and a partner. And I still struggle with it, as I'm sure we all probably will for a while, but it's something I'm actively working on, and it's constantly in the back of my mind.
Let me add to you that after listening to sessions as we're having today, I asked myself, why do we have to fix adults? And we realized that our education system is the issue. We teach academic skills, we teach speech, we teach debate, which is critical thinking. But the greatest of all skills, the greatest of all human skills at home, at work, in our communities, in our world, is the ability to listen, as Jonathan just said, to open our mind, to validate the worth of others, whether it's in our families, whether it's at work, whether it's between Putin and Biden, whether it is between the various cultures of the world. This is the greatest of all human skills. So right now we are very, very focused on bringing these skills to organizations outside of our company. So we're working with universities. We're working with the most prominent private school in Charlotte, North Carolina. bring these skills to the students in age-appropriate ways. And we're working with Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, with 25,000 students to transform the way we teach people academic skills and human skills, so that when they graduate from our schools and go out into life, they can live life fully, care for others, experience true love where people genuinely care for each other. So I believe you've all put your toe in the water to what we believe is the most transformative educational process, where we teach human skills along with academic skills, so that our schools will start creating these natural skills. So I remember we had some young people in the class in one of our Aspen classes, and we asked them, how did it affect you? And it was profound how these 19 and 20-year-old, happened to be three girls, said how it affected their dating relationships, how it affected the way they dealt with their friendships. It was just an amazing impact on every age. So our hope is to give adults the skills that they should have had to enter life, but to work it just as hard on a vaccine that will, tomorrow's graduates of our primary and secondary education will have these human skills, so we can learn to work together and see the beauty in other people, respect the differences, understand how to flex through those differences, and we can live in greater harmony. Because if you look behind the scenes of the news, remember it was Tom Friedman who wrote an article 2 years ago now. He said, we don't have a poverty of money in this country. We have a poverty of dignity. People don't feel listened to. Not a matter of pay or benefits. When they don't feel valued, when they don't feel they matter, you'll see anger and unrest like you've never seen before, which we're seeing. So this human skill of listening gives you a chance to validate others' thoughts and give them a sense that they matter. There was a lady, Jessica Walls, Jennifer Walls, who wrote an article recently in the Wall Street Journal on mattering. She calls it mattering. We call it everybody matters. She calls it mattering. And it's the same exact issue we need to address. So my hope is that each one of you now are a disciple of caring, because you cannot care for people unless you know how to listen to them with the skills of listening, and then encourage others to join you so we can start healing it. So your comments have been what we've heard for the last 17 years, has made us totally committed internally to Barry-Wehmiller in our university, in Chapman and Co-Leadership Institute and Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities. We were blessed with a message that can profoundly heal the disharmony we have in the world. And it begins right here with us being good stewards of your lives. And hopefully we've touched you deeply, and we can now have better relationships in every part of our life. So your comments have been great. Go ahead.
Thanks, Bob. Let's hear from Ariana next.
Hello, everyone. Ariana from Berwin-Miller Converting Solution, Italy Marketing Department. So what I appreciated about this course was, first of all, the opportunity to attend this in person and in Italian. That was really great, because set a natural way to communicate between all of us. And there was, as Heidi said before, really natural environment and without judgment. And also the activities altogether in person were really helpful for us, for me, but I believe also for all my colleagues, to better understand what the coaches were teach us. For example, what I bring home from this course, I gain a lot of awareness from this course about the differences about our behavior, and really to focus more on the active listen and to try and sometimes it's difficult to shut up my brain while I'm listening to the other person. And this is something that day by day I try to put into to act. So really appreciating the fact that it was possible to do that in person, because I remember last year when I got the possibility to be with you in Philips, I talked with Ken about this course, and I told him, yes, I know there is the online classes, but I'm waiting for the in-person class because I do believe this kind of lesson should be attended in person and in our own language, because there is a lot of potential, and it is something that can be more deeply understandable by all of us. So thank
you
you
for
for
that
this
feedback.
opportunity.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
I'm really happy Barry Miller was able to flex during COVID to provide a virtual environment so that people could still engage in the course. But I agree, and the fact that we now offer it in multiple primary languages for countries has been really positive feedback as well. So thank you for affirming.
You're
Filippo.
welcome.
So I would say that Ariana, who's a very thoughtful lady, us to have in our care. Ariana, don't you think listening should be one of the greatest skills of people in marketing?
Yeah, we are called communication specialists, but we are never so specialist. We always learn uh, from the others. So we are never specialist enough. We can always improve ourselves.
Well, yeah, because again, if you're in strategic marketing, which you're brilliant in, the way you get really good is to understand your customers and to listen. But wouldn't it be the greatest skill we could teach our sales executives to listen to our customers, not talk to them?
Fair enough. All right. I see Filippo's hands up, and then we'll have Nieves, and we'll move on to the second question and just kind of overall, anyone can share their thoughts from there. So, Filippo.
Hello, everybody. I'm Filippo Zatti. I'm working in Italy in a flexible system and in sales. So part as Ariana said already, we did the course together, and Maria. I've been surprised that this profile described me better than I could describe myself. And second, the course in Italian language allowed us to understand. I would like to repeat, but to understand between the line also of the answer from the colleagues. And the big discover for me was the three sales guys present at the course get the same profile, more or less, not exactly at the same point, but more or less in the same quadrant. And more or less also from technical department or administration, and then confirm that in the environment of our customer, the people I meet during my visit or negotiation, not always, but often they have that part of profile, and allowed me to, again, confirm the way to approach them. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Well, Filippo, again, I just think about your role in the sales organization with earning the trust and respect of your customers. Isn't one of the foundational skills all of our salespeople we want to have the capacity to listen and flex to the style of the customer? Because again, to me, that is one of the greatest skills you could have as a sales executive, is to listen to the customers, to understand their needs, and for them to feel validated, not told what they should think, not told what they should buy. But I would think it would really be a foundational skill for earning the trust and respect of our customers in a natural, beautiful way. So just think how much better you're going to be now that we tuned you up.
I hope to deliver the result, Bob, as soon as possible. But it's true. Often, again, I'm improving my activities daily. But it's true. Often, once you have even limited time on the negotiation, better to keep silent, listen what the customer want to listen, than speak too much and deliver notes, data, and better to listen and answer properly at the question. Finish. And easier even to to do the job.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thanks
Filippo,
for
I'll watch your performance. I'm sure it's going to dramatically improve, and we'll all cheer as you succeed.
Thank you, Bob. I do my best, but it's never enough for myself, you know. Anyway, let's see in the next few years with the new team.
We're just taking, Filippo, we're just taking your best to another level of best, very best.
Very best, exactly. Very best. Like the Japanese, never stop to improve. And let's say
Right,
it's
right.
a good, it's the best way to motivate ourselves every day.
Thanks, Felipe.
Thank
All
you.
right. Nieves.
Yeah, hi, good morning. My name is Diego Soto. I'm a senior project engineer design group out of the St. Louis office. And my biggest takeaway from the class was definitely learning how to listen, but also having new tools to be able to, in a way, prompt the other person to truly come to the conclusion that they really want to come to. I think one of the biggest lessons was to know how not to, like, a lot of times we listen, but then we immediately want to give our opinion or suggestions to try to help the other person. But part of the biggest lesson from the class was for me to know, especially not only with my coworkers, but family members as well and loved ones, that a lot of times we want to just jump in and give our opinion, give our suggestions to try to make them feel better. But if that person doesn't come to that conclusion on their own, they, like, every person is on their own path. And so I think they have to come to that conclusion by themselves. So I love that the class gave us some tools on how to ask those specific questions so that they can actually come to that conclusion themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. Think we are good with hands right now, and I didn't see anything in the chat bar. Feel free, if you do have any feedback on that first question, you can still share it in the chat bar. Question number 2, as we round this out. How has participating in this course impacted your personal and professional life? You know, after learning everything you've learned, being able to practice it a little bit, knowing that you have this new tool set to offset the experience, how's it impacted your personal and professional life now?
And I'd add to that, which has it impacted more? Because the feedback I've received over 15 to 17 years, people tend to go to the most important relationships first, their personal. And again, it's always interesting to me that when there's so much what people say, not with the words, but with their body language. And so listening to understand what's behind the words is so good. And again, that's what affects, I think, our personal relationships, which are so important to our happiness, our sense of fulfillment. So it's interesting. Again, we did this to convert managers into leaders, but people told us we're better sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters as a result of this, and friends. So be interesting. And how did the people that you are part of your life react to you when you came home with this new skill?
Absolutely. Carrie said in the chat bar, the feeling wheel comes in very handy to express and communicate more effectively to others. And I totally agree. Sometimes I think I'm angry, but when I kind of take a look at that wheel, I realize that it's actually maybe a very similar emotion that's in that same quadrant of that wheel. And it makes me feel a little bit better because then I can kind of figure that out. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Hey, Sabrina, why don't we ask Sabrina? She looks very serious and very present. I'm sure she's been listening with her new skills intently. So Sabrina, what What is, if your best friend said to you, what did you get out of that class? What would you say, Sabrina?
Hello, I am Sabrina, and I work in PCMC Italy in accounting department. In this moment, I am very excited. It is the first time that I can speak with you and with all the team. I am very happy to participate to this group because in my life I have always spoken a lot. Listening now for me it is very important because it's the way to improve the relation with the friends and is helping me in the family too. Listen the experience of the other people at work, in the family, everywhere is very important to share with them the life experience and can help everyone in the work to listen, to speak with the colleagues every day for every problem is very important. You can be happy everywhere when you are at work, and if you have a problem, you have to speak, and the people, the colleague who is in front of you have to listen you. So speak, listen, and speak. It is very important. I thank you very much because it's a great experience.
So this is the
And to speak with you.
So this is the new and improved Sabrina we're talking to now, right?
Yes, I know. And I am very happy. I am really very happy. Can I tell you something else? Hello?
Sure, go ahead.
Bob Chapman is stop.
Frozen.
Like no, is not moving.
Way to pick up on those non-verbals.
Okay. I thank you very much for your attention.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Sabrina.
Okay, I thank you to you.
I don't see any other hands raised right now or any comments in the chat bar, but I know one thing that I've learned, and I apologize for not doing this earlier, but my name is Ashley Littleton. I help to lead our global recognition programs across Barry Waymiller's organization, as well as to lead some sales empowerment initiatives that work, and I work alongside a lot of our sales executives and leadership. So I've been with the organization for 8 years, and one thing I didn't realize is I get to practice this a lot in person at work, and I'm constantly striving to do that. But I also realize now that I have this this way of doing it at home too. And I think that like a lot of my friends and family like realize that I'm being more intentional when I'm listening to others, or when I'm giving feedback, or when I'm providing like some positivity and recognition. I think some of these tools just kind of come naturally now in my language between both. And I don't try to speak work in that sense at home, but just because of the way that we learn and because of its naturalness, it just kind of happens now. So that's kind of my own personal take from taking this course a few months ago.
Ashley, I totally agree with you. And I don't know if I did either. My name is Michael Nathy. I'm the Barry Waymiller University program leader. But I'm very new myself, and I actually went through the course myself as a participant recently. And I had a very similar experience. You know, like I learned all of this, and I try to put it into practice. But at first, you're kind of like, it feels a little clunky. It doesn't feel like natural right away, right? And I actually, like Bob said, tried it out first with people closest to me. So I'm married, and I started trying to use some of these skills with my wife. And literally, no joke, one of the first experiences which she said to me is, "Michael, stop HRing me." And I was like, oh no. I was like, I promise that's not what I'm trying to do. And then, as I've done it more and more, it's, as Ashley said, it's become more natural. So whereas it, at first maybe felt a little clunky, a little rote where she, picked up on it, now it's just coming out, more naturally, and I'm able to put myself into that spot where I'm a little bit more present and just listening and understanding, from what her perspective and others around me.
Really true. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else see this coming out personally or professionally now that you've been exposed to it? No? All right. Well, I'm going to open it up to any general dialogue or any kind of questions. I think we lost Bob there for a little bit. He may be able to hop back on, but if not, just wanted to see if anybody had any general feedback around the course or anything they've learned. Otherwise, we'll end a few minutes early today. Heidi.
Hey again. What I just thought was really cool too, and what just continued to make me really happy to work at BW, is the fact that I've, like I've said, I've taken classes like these before, and I feel like it just ended there. You took the class and no one really seemed to care about the impact or believe in what was said. And I feel like at the end of the class, listening to what everybody said about how it impacted them, not just back then because I took it in January, but also today, I feel like there's so much energy behind the feedback that we're giving, and it's so cool to me to see that there's this dynamic potential that exists in all of us, and for all of us to just continue talking about this and focusing on this. And we're all, it seems like to me, we're all really interested in perpetuating this instead of just having it be a course and say, okay, we did it, but we're actually continuing it. So I thought that was really cool. And also just to say thank you to everybody for that, because again, I've been here for about a year and I feel like this year has gone by really fast. And a large part of that is just because I think the people that I get to work with are really amazing. So thank you.
Absolutely. I agree. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Last minute comment, feedback? All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I just saw someone raise their hand. Hi.
Hi, this is Helga. I just wanted to thank you. It was great, and it was amazing to take it directly from Paul. I gotta say, he walks the talk. It was amazing just to watch him, how he does everything he does. And this course really helped, at least starting to help me to understand other people better, or not to jump to judgments very soon. And the other thing is, I think leaders can play a huge role here, because I took this thing the second time. The first time I didn't really get anything out of it, so to say. But the second time it is different, because I'm being held accountable, because I'm talking to my leader on regularly on my how are you doing, how I'm doing, what are my struggles, and this is really helping me a lot, I gotta say. And so thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I completely agree. It's great when you can absorb it the first time, but circling back around, in a few years is always a positive, and I myself just did that, and I agree. I take something, I think it takes a little bit more each time I take one of our courses, a little bit more, absorb a little bit more, retain it a little bit more. So it sounds
right.
like you're
every
in that
time
spot
something
too.
new. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you guys taking about an hour of your time today to connect with us and give us a little bit of feedback on this course. I can clearly see it's made a positive impact on everybody, both personally and professionally. And I know that Bob loves to hear that we are continuing to provide an opportunity to help grow ourselves internally. So thank you for sharing with him. And if you dropped on early or late or whatever, I will share the recording a little bit later so that you can refresh your memory, and feel free to provide any feedback. Additionally, if you didn't get a chance to speak up and you have anything else to say, okay?
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.